You have gotten this memo before, many times before, but this time it comes with a funny story, and I think it's going to get you. So the memo is, please learn all of the names of the postures in your practice. The way that Sharat would say it is know to recite quickly. Know to recite quickly the names of the postures in the practice. The beautiful thing about learning is that everyone's style is different. So learn your style, know your style, and figure this out. Some people make flashcards. Some people have me quiz them. Some people write it down. Some people get a recording. Some people draw pictures. Figure out your style. For most of you who have done this, but if I'm talking to you because it's a little sketchy, do this. Do it for me, do it for the legacy, do it for your lineage. Eventually, what know to recite quickly means is the ability to take the mantra of your posture names as just a vinyasa of itself. Surya Namaskara, Parangustasana, Parahastasana, Trikonasana, Parshvakonasana, Prasarita Padatanasana, Parsvatanasana, Uttitahasta Parangustasana, blah, 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 blah. That's how I learned to do it in Mysore. Another rationale here is that each posture is an animal. Or maybe it's a person, like an immensely interesting historical person. Or a geometric shape. And would you want to enact or interact with an animal and not know its name? That's not the postures themselves have a content to them. And when they're nameless, sometimes there is this beautiful non-conceptuality of the practice. And I hung out there for 11 years. And I get it. I get how the non-conceptuality has its own beauty. And at this time, I want you to own in this way, in the way of naming, the heritage that is the postures that you know. Know them in your body, but also know the name. Know to recite quickly. So actually, 2 stories. In that non-conceptual world of just movement, no words, no names, barely even form, I was coerced into teaching my first lead classes at A2 Yoga. I landed in town, I was just kind of dropping around. They're like, we've got a Saturday lead Ashtanga class, you should teach it. No, I'm not a teacher, stay the heck away from me, absolutely not. This is 2010. Same year that Sharat tried to authorize me, and I said, no, I'm not a teacher, please, I'm not ready. The way A2 Yoga got me to do it was okay, well, if you don't teach the Saturday Ashtanga class, then we're going to give it to this person who knows nothing, and we're going to let him teach the entire primary series. And somehow that threat to the method itself was enough to force me to step up and take on that Saturday class, which I did for years, which was a blast, which is where I met a bunch of you. And at the same time, none of you remember what an absolute disaster that class was. Luckily, no one in this entire town had knowledge of the practice, and so you didn't know how much I was absolutely destroying it. But that first day, I did not know, as I was heading in to teach, that there were 17 vinyasas in Surya Namaskara B. I had to ask a friend. I phoned a friend to figure out the number of vinyasas in Surya Namaskara B, and it went from there. It was a disaster. Thank you for those of you who didn't even judge me when I deserved to be judged heavily on so many levels. But I don't want that to be you. Learn from my mistakes in this way and others. Here's the real story. So this would have been 2016. By the time I actually had internalized all of these things on the conceptual level, I feel like I've had some remorse recently that the way that I've shared with you about Sharat the last 7 weeks is a lot of like anecdotal funny stuff. And I finally, in my sleep last night, actually like processed something that puts that in context. I think when I landed in Mysore in 2009, I was a my insincere academic. Lots of sophistry. I just did what was fun and was very playful in my work, and was often told that my writing was I was having too much fun with my writing and too much conceptual playfulness in the work. And it was true. I was not sincere in my sociology, which was the one-sided duality to the utter extreme seriousness with which I took Ashtanga. Like, that became a way of protecting myself, this utter extreme self-seriousness from the social context of yoga in Los Angeles. But also, I think because I saw myself as an unserious academic, I became deeply serious about Ashtanga yoga. It wasn't good. The self-seriousness of my approach, it was still there, when I started teaching. And I just didn't, it was just humorless. It was just without exception. And maybe the vastness and the depth of the tradition had me approach it with a kind of rigidity of mind that also calmed my mind and totally stabilized me. And yet that humorlessness, some of you may have glimpsed it, but certainly when I started spending lots of time with Sharat, I think it was clear. And in those days, in the beginnings of the 2010s, when he was first stepping into that role, even in, when I was first there, Pattabhi Jois was dying and he was already trying to step into that role. I think that there were so few people, and it was all so diffuse, that he really was able to see and what was going on with people individually and kind of choose projects. And I saw that in different ways across the student body. And for a lot of people, the project was to get them to take it seriously, to get them to be disciplined. I had a surfeit of discipline and seriousness. And from very early, the dynamic of him and me was super playful. He pushed me super hard because I was so game, always so game for whatever crazy project. And at the same time, in the midst of the intensity of the way that we worked, he was always trying to get me to laugh, always trying to get me to break concentration, give him personal eye contact instead of be on my drishti, get me to take something a little less seriously. At one point, I was there with an injury, and he was just do whatever you want. The ways in which he was trying to just get me to get in contact with the cosmic joke, which I was in contact with everywhere else except for on my mat, now in retrospect is so clearly part of his transmission to me. And so what that's left me with is a relaxation of that remorse, that what I've shared with you has been so lighthearted and lacks the gravitas that I think is inherent in the method and his transmission as well. So here's a piece of that mixes the intensity of the way that we work together, which is just what excited me, and the mischievousness. So 2016, we're doing, we're, as a group, there's 100 teachers together that summer. And so we'd have conference every single day, and randomly he would choose people and say, okay, X person, Siobhan, recite the postures in your practice. And you would have to go, right? So a mark of how crazy we were, in the level of intensity, is he had me doing all of intermediate series and advance through Hanumanasana, which is basically 2 practices back to back every day. I was loving it. There are other people who've had that level of intensity in how he pushed them, and it really ruined their love of practice. I think for me, it was just fun, and I would never push anyone hard like the level of intensity I was at there in my 30s. But you saw me, like, I was having a blast. In any case, my day came, and he was like, Angela, recite your postures, recite quickly. And so I get going, like, through the standing poses, and then he stops, and he, like, gives me this hilarious look, this mischievous grin that I got to know so well. And it was not that much of a grin. It was like, and he said, from back. And what he meant was recite all the postures in your practice from Hanumanasana back to Surya Namaskara quickly backwards. The amazing thing is I don't think I screwed it up. So, like, again, there was this mixture of intensity and just absurdity in the way that we were together. And by the end of that, I was just like, yoga is not serious. Yoga is not serious. I could, like, what if he asked me to actually do my practice backwards someday? Like, that never happened, but it absolutely could have. And in any case, I share that with you because I am never going to ask you to recite the postures of your practice, unless you ask me to and we have consent, quickly, in public, in front of a group. And certainly not going to ask you to do it from back. But what if that were to happen? Wouldn't you want to be sharp, knowing that you might be called upon in that moment? And that was the environment that we had together. Like the level of being on a razor's edge, knowing that, like, I was expected to be clear and expected to have a readiness, but it was never serious. It was always just like, right? And none of this is serious, but it is serious too. And especially now, I have to ask you with a little bit more seriousness to know all of the names to recite quickly. Thanks.